Hello, Kim.
Hello, Lauren.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. And you?
Good, good. Yes, very well, thank you. Very well. Thank you for taking the time to sit with me today. As you know, this week is Dying Matters Awareness Week, which is all about kind of being open about death and getting ready to be in a good place for when we die. What we wanted to do this week is we wanted to ask you a couple of questions as our kind of qualified death, grief, funeral, loss expert, just to kind of help not just the Aura community, but as anybody who we can really, to kind of become more open with death, and along with the conversation as well. So just to start, could you just give us a little bit of background on what your professional experience is and kind of what you do here at Aura?
Okay, well, I've been a civil celebrant for the nearly 7 years now, and I've worked in Norfolk and Suffolk predominantly, and have helped numerous families say goodbye to their loved ones in a way that was appropriate and meaningful to them. So that has meant all different types of ceremonies, all different types of location, because I do believe that the most important thing is to honor a life in a way that is meaningful and personal to you. So that is what I've tried to do. And I've been very, very fortunate and have met lots and lots of wonderful people who have shared with me some of the most precious memories in their lives. And it's always been an honor for me to help these people at the time that perhaps they need it most. Since joining Aura, I have been awarded the title of Aura Angel, which still seems quite odd to me, but I love it. And I love being part of what Aura is all about, which is encouraging people to keep living their lives fully and well, but also have the conversation and not be afraid to think, okay, death is going to happen at some stage, but we're going to talk about it now. Once we've done that, it's fine. Everyone knows what I want or what my loved one wants, and we just continue to get on with life. So really honoured and very, very proud to be part of the Aura team.
Yeah. And I imagine kind of throughout your experience, the conversation of death has been something that's been brought up quite a lot. I would imagine that you've probably met people who have had successful conversations, who haven't had conversations and wished that they'd had. So in your experience, why do you think it's so important for people to be open and to have the conversation about death?
Well, death is, of course, one of the two things that we all have in common. It doesn't matter where we come from, what we do with our lives. It is something that we at some time will all share. And it will be our turn one day. And when that day comes, if we haven't had the conversation, those that we've shared life with will have to make some very, very difficult choices. And even though we may think that we know someone well enough to make those choices, we, of course, without the knowledge that the conversation will bring to us, we run the risk of getting it wrong. And I remember when I first started work at the Woodland Burial Centre here in Norwich, I remember seeing a young chap laying flowers on a grave. It was actually on my first day there, and his grief was very, very raw and very, very evident. And I assumed that he was recently bereaved, and I asked my colleague when the funeral of his loved one had taken place, and her reply really surprised me because she said it was 3 years earlier. Right. She then went on to explain that the grave that he was visiting was that of his fiancée. and she died very, very suddenly and very, very tragically, and they had not had the conversation. And so he had to make choices, and the choices that he made, involved having his loved one buried, but he wasn't sure whether he'd made the right choice. And that had prevented him from actually moving through the grief process in a way that allowed him to accept what he'd done, the choices that he'd made, and continue to honor her and love her as he had done in life. And I think just witnessing that, it prompted me to actually think myself, okay, what would happen in my life? What about myself, my husband? I don't really know what he wants. And that was a really big wake-up call for me. And it's something that since then, and that was, rather a long time ago, nearly a decade ago now, I've realized that actually it is vitally important that we have these conversations.
Yeah. And I imagine for lots of people, having the conversation about death is one thing, actually being able to kind of openly talk about this elusive thing that is going to happen to us all, but is quite scary or very scary to lots of people. Having the conversation is one thing, but when is the right time to talk about it? Is it something that you bring up over your cornflakes in the morning? Is it something that you kind of go out of your way to have like quite a meaningful conversation about? When would you say is the right time to start that conversation?
None of us know what tomorrow will bring. So why wait to have the conversation? If it has to be over the cornflakes, then fine. But I think what I've learned is, and this comes from not only my personal experience with having the conversation with my husband, who is really not comfortable talking about these things, but also from the many, many people that I've met, however difficult that we imagine the conversation might be, I am 100% convinced that having the conversation will be, in the long term, a lot easier than not having it. So I can't say when the perfect time will be in anyone's life. I just know that because we can't see what's around the corner, having it sooner rather than later is probably a very, very good idea.
Yeah. So let's say I've got some very specific funeral wishes. Let's say that I want to be scattered, my ashes scattered in a very particular place. I don't want a funeral service. I just want my family to go off on a holiday or something. Let's say I've got some very specific wishes, but my family don't want to hear it, basically. I try and talk to them and I try and say, when I die, I want this to happen. But let's say that, they're not receptive to it at all. They don't want to know. They don't want to hear about it because acknowledging it means it's going to happen. How would you help me have that conversation with them? Because obviously sharing wishes is so important, especially if you have them. How would you help me have that conversation with my family?
Okay, so before you begin the conversation, I would suggest that you have a think about what you need to say. So if you have a particular set of wishes, perhaps you want to be cremated rather than buried, or you have very clear ideas about the kind of gathering you would like to take place post-committal, jot them down so that you don't forget to mention them once the conversation begins. Also, another way, especially as you mentioned, if loved ones find it really difficult to open up in conversation, especially a conversation about death, then how about writing all of your wishes down in a sealed letter? You can then begin the conversation with, you don't have to open this now. In fact, I'd rather you didn't open it, but I need to let you know that should anything ever happen to me, you will find everything that you need to know in this envelope. And I'm going to put this envelope in my favorite drawer. And if we move, I'll let you know where you'll be able to find it. So don't worry about that. And if you'd like to do the same for me and let me know what your wishes are, we talk about it now, or you can write your own letter. And if we do this now, we won't ever have to worry about it again. So that's how I would start, you know, having that conversation, especially with people who find it really, really difficult. There are different ways of doing it. You know, some people, especially in the digital age, they might want to email rather than an old-fashioned letter. But all I know is that the many, many families that I've met who have a little piece of paper in their hand, however that, you know, is, however old, faded, crumpled, it's got coffee stains, whatever, they are able to make the preparations and the choices that they need to put in place because they've got this little piece of paper or a voice memo or something. So that's what I would say. We're all different. We all live totally different lives. So for some, it might be, you know, finding another way. But before you have the conversation, make sure that you know what you need to say. So I hope that helps.
Yes, very much so. Thanks very much, Kim. Thank you.
You're welcome. Lovely to speak to you.
You too.